The March 2025 City of St. Pete Beach Board of Adjustment meeting. If we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Causey?
Here.
Member Core?
Here.
Vice Chair Garshaw?
Here.
Member Small?
Here.
Chair Chase?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Fantastic. To start, we'll make sure we have approval of today's agenda. Kristen, any changes?
Madam Chair, no changes are proposed.
All in favor of approving the agenda?
Approve.
Aye.
Aye.
Fantastic. We'll next move on to item number 2, which is audience comments. This would be the time, if anybody's here today that would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda, you have the floor. Otherwise, if there's an item on the agenda, please fill out a yellow comment card, provide that to the city clerk, and you'll have your time to speak during that period. Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes from last meeting? Any concerns? No. No? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
I'll second. Roll call, please.
Member Core?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garshaw?
Yes.
Small?
Yes.
Member Causey?
Yes.
Chair Chase?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Moving on to action items. The first item for today is election of officers. I know when I saw this on the agenda, I was kind of surprised because I feel like we just did this, but I think it's something of the election cycle. Is that why, Kristen?
Yes.
It does happen every March.
That's correct. It's in the ordinances that every year, the first meeting after the election.
Yep.
Okay, so that's, so I'm happy to remain in the chair seat if there's any, concerns with that. But I'd be happy to continue representing in that capacity. And Member Garshaw, are you interested in remaining?
Yeah, unless
Vice
somebody
Chair?
else wants to.
I'd make a motion to keep the current members as the officers.
I would gladly second that.
Roll call, please.
Okay. Member Small?
Yes.
Member Causey?
Yes.
Member Core?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garshaw?
Yes.
Chair Chase?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Fantastic. Moving on to our first case for this afternoon, case number 24104. Prior to the city's presentation, can we just disclose any ex parte? Member Small?
No.
Ex parte? None?
I've done a site visit to everything today, but
Okay.
Site visits.
Perfect. This is the continuation of the case that we heard back on the January meeting. I'm comfortable with, the presentations that we had from the past from the city and understanding of the presence, and I'm just mostly curious to hear an update from the applicant. Are we in agreement as a board on that capacity?
From them. They were left to have a joint association meeting.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe what we said is that Mr. Johnson and Jane, is Jane here? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, there you are. That you guys were going to get together and tell us if you came up with a compromise that we could all live with.
Exactly, that was our goal. So if we could hear from the applicant to start on an update on those discussions.
We have the clerk swear in the witnesses.
Oh, please, thank you. Anybody that would be is planning to speak today, if you could please stand and be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm that the information or factual representation that you're about to give to the board is true? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I may, I have visited that site.
Okay.
Okay, well, good afternoon. My name is Dan Nelson. You might remember me from the last time I appeared before you. So like you said, that we're basically here to give you an update on what you asked us to do. So I'm just going to read a brief statement so I keep on track here. The board voted to continue until today's date any decision on granting the variance to replace 2 additional sheds. As you know, we had 3 and 2 variance requests, and the tennis shed was approved. The board made 2 requests of a YTC. The first is that the YTC would attempt to locate an alternate location for the sheds, and number 2, that the YTC and Captiva K homeowners or representatives there would meet to discuss potential landscape enhancements that would address concerns raised by some Captiva K owners. The YTC, we believe, has satisfied both of your requests. On March 12, 2025, Jane McCrory, our board president, met with Ann and Nicole, the 2 board presidents of the Captiva K Condominium Association and Captiva K Townhome Association. During this meeting, there were discussions regarding our comprehensive property-wide landscape initiative that is already underway at the YTC, as well as a more attractive style of bungalow-type shed. I submitted several renderings of our landscaping proposal showing the sheds in both locations with the shrubbery, which I think, Kristen, you have pictures 1 or 2 and 4? Do you have those pictures?
I do have them as part of the presentation, but they were included as part of the posting and in the packets.
So they've seen those then? Okay. Additionally, copies of the shed images were provided to the Captiva Cape residents along with names of the proposed shrubs. These shrubs are fast-growing and salt-tolerant, and one such species I learned, because I was looking at them as I was walking, is right across the street at your St. Pete Public Works. It shields around their 8-foot-high fence, so you can see our wall, so you can see what a shrub would look like of the type that we're discussing. The Captiva Cape residents were receptive to these options, along with a fenced-in pen for maintaining maintenance materials that are currently stored in the open due to the storm damage. Jane McCrory also explained to the Captiva presidents the limitations on other locations for relocating the sheds, mainly due to needed accessibility. However, one possible location was identified in close proximity to the current shed locations, which are also in pictures 4, 5, and 6. This new location itself would be acceptable to all parties. However, there will be an additional cost of just over $16,000 for YTC owners to move the sheds, which involves trenching and some other things. A recent YTC vote of owners indicated they did not feel it was reasonable to pay additional costs to relocate their sheds, especially since we, like many communities, have suffered extraordinary losses to our infrastructure due to 2 hurricanes, and we are now looking at over $300,000 needed to restore our landscaping. Our owners feel that with the landscape improvements, restored fencing for the maintenance materials, and a new, more attractive style shed, that these aesthetics issues raised by some Captiva neighbors have been adequately addressed without YTC owners incurring the additional costs. So we hope today that this board will approve our shed requests, and we've done basically what you've asked us to do. That's all that I have.
Any questions or comments for the applicant? No?
I'd like to hear from Captiva.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good enough? Okay, thank you.
Do we have a representative from the Captiva? Please, thank you.
Hi, I'm Ann Johnlow. I'm president of the Captiva K Condominiums, and Nicole Myers here for the other association too. We did meet with Jane. My concern is, and this only came up after I talked to Kristen the other day, that the materials for the new sheds weren't submitted as part of the variance. So if it can only be approved with what was originally there, we are opposed, because part of the agreement was them making it more attractive with kind of a cottagey bungalow style look. But as long as they do the landscaping, there were 2 more concerns. One that we discussed with Jane, and that was if moving the sheds had to reorient the position, if the pitch of the roofs were such that that would come right into our property, that they have some kind of mechanism to, gutters or something to take care of that. And we would like to ask that fence that they put up to enclose their area be 8 feet rather than 6 feet. And I understand that that is within the code. I do not know what height the previous fence was. Maybe Jane knows. It was at 6 feet. Yeah.
How many, would you say, how many feet?
It was 6.
Prior feet with.
So if the sheds remain in the current location, that 8 feet of fencing would be, would help to shield it, because even fast-growing plants, it's going to take a few years for them to fit in. But we're in agreement with their landscaping. We certainly think that moving them was preferable, but as long as they are, that they look nice, that they're in keeping with their community color, paint schemes, and they do something to shield them, that is a compromise we could live with. And the other thing, and I think that the Yacht and Tennis Club has indicated that they want to be good neighbors, that they do a better job of patrolling that fence line that typically has a lot of debris and just rubbish, things that the wind blows in, and it gets there between the vegetation, and it's all on our side, but we can't get to it to clean it up. So,
Thank you both so much for taking the time to meet. And so what I'm understanding is you've come to an agreement, assuming the beautification of the sheds and the cottage-type feel, the fencing moved to 8 feet, and the landscaping plan as discussed
right, I
together.
think that many homeowners would prefer that they be in the other location, that is further from our view and from the fencing.
But we're hearing you're willing to compromise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe we're willing to, would you agree, Nicole? I mean.
Well, we'll give time for everybody to come up and
Okay.
speak too, don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to speak for the other association. I can only represent mine.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make one comment about one thing she said?
Sure, sir.
We did at our initial variance application packet was all the specifications for the Wally Watt shed. So we have a board meeting tonight to discuss if this gets approved, if we go with that or another company. But there was at least an initial specification sheet put into the packet.
That includes the design component that they're looking for. Okay.
What are we referring to, that style and material? Sorry, Dan? Just what was the style and material change? What are you calling that?
Well, another company calls it something else. It calls it a bungalow style. It's pretty close to what the Wally Watt design was. It's definitely not the straight aluminum walls that it is now, which is, I mean, that's 25-year-old technology. So it's going to have some trim boards and things like that. But the two companies are similar, just use different names.
Okay. And is now, is that a product, or is there further discussion that needs to happen?
So I will note that staff did not receive any kind of material change, landscaping plan. We received very limited information, and I do have the pictures in the narrative that was in your packet, but I do have a slide if anybody would like to look at that, to make any determination if any additional variances are required, if it would be to be relocated. I haven't had the opportunity, or staff
Have
hasn't.
to be conditional on.
Yeah, we haven't
Yeah.
made sure additional variances would be necessary, so
Okay.
I'd have to look at that based on.
But we would be able to condition that based on.
Absolutely.
I may, I have one question. On the fence that is 6 foot, are we talking about the chain link?
Yes, sir. Yep.
You're going to go to 8 feet? Are you
Well-
going to do chain link again?
No, we would probably do a white rail fence like we had before, but we were hoping that with the hedging behind it would be more attractive to Captiva rather than seeing a white fence. But if that's what you all decide for us to do, then we'll have to do that.
I think the thought was it's going to take a little while for the shrubbery to grow, right? So if the fence was 8 feet to start, that would at least provide some visual.
We had a meeting with our landscaper Friday last week, and I specifically asked him about what hedges he was going to put back then. There was 3 choices, one of which I explained was over here across the street. They grow 12 to 24 inches a year, and he was going to give us 6-foot-high plants to start with. They're 17 gallons, so they're already almost to the top of well, they're at the top of the current fence, and they would probably grow 1 to 2 feet each year after that. I don't think we should be expected to put in 12-foot-high mature plants either, because that's quite a burden on us to do that.
So your preference would be to keep a 6-foot fence, but start with
Put the
6-foot
put the shrubs
shrubberies
back
that will
there,
then
correct.
grow up. Okay.
I think you're 8-foot fence.
Colony was requesting an 8-foot fence, but they would prefer to remain with the 6-foot fence and put shrubbery that would start
I
at
don't
6 feet.
understand
and then
that,
grow.
but
Yes, Colony, would you like to? Go ahead.
I guess my concern with that is that I thought the fence was there to kind of pen in their materials that would not be in the shed. So a chain link fence, you're going to see their landscaping debris, their parking stops, their ladders that won't fit in there.
He said they're not doing.
No chain link fence.
Okay.
That was a
So-
misspeak from our side that we
Okay,
clarified.
okay.
It is
Thank you for clarifying.
All right, thank you both for providing the context on the conversations that were had in between meetings. We will open it up for public comment. I would like to just remind that we've already had public comment on this case, so if you've already shared kind of your position, that hasn't changed since the last meeting, and being respectful of everybody's time, let's just be mindful of
I
that.
think there's one other association, though, in Captiva that needs to speak still.
Sure. Why don't you lead, and then following her comments, if there's anybody else that would like to speak on behalf or against or provide your position, we're happy to hear from you.
Hi, I'm Nicole Meyer. I'm the secretary of Captiva K Homeowners Association, and I did meet with Jane and Ann in the conversation. Ann and I do have a difference of opinion at this point in time. I feel that the cottages that were presented, obviously after the variance proposal that you now have received, have a cottage look, and Jane and I requested that maybe some windows in the back facing us would have it more cottage looking versus a solid back to it. Also, I was the one that recommended the buttonwood plant that grows quickly and is salt tolerant. And the other thing was the shed going around the material for their landscaping, et cetera, so we wouldn't see it. I spoke with our other homeowner association people on the board, and we felt that knowing they would be incurring $16,000 just to move them, and we're not talking about very far, that we as being good neighbors also, because we have suffered tremendously too with the hurricane, that there is some grace and mercy that has to be going both ways. So we felt, the board that I spoke with, the members, that we felt that if they follow through and meet those requirements that Jane proposed, that we would be okay with it. I also want to reiterate that I was on the board before as just a director, and I'm now the secretary. And some of my community has suggested that the reason why I'm not being a fair player is that I have been vendetta to the old board. And I want it to be on record that is grossly inaccurate and very disappointing they think that, because I think as an association for the Yacht and Tennis Club and the Homeowner Association of Captiva K, we need to work together and make sure that it works for both of us. And technically, they can do what they want on their property. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to share their thoughts on this case before we close for board discussion?
Is this for the people that requested to speak, or is something different?
Yeah, if we have yellow cards, now would be the time.
Okay, even if they spoke previously.
That's
Okay.
If they've already spoken and they don't want to speak again, then that's fine.
Thank you.
So I want to say that it was, I found a productive conversation with the two women from Captiva. Not only just to talk about the sheds, but to talk about common things that we're facing as communities. And we even talked about perhaps putting a group of local presidents together, especially in this post-storm period, so that we could discuss other issues that we're facing in common and how we've solved them, which we were able to scratch the surface of during our conversation. So besides the sheds topic, there was something good that came out of you putting us together, so thank you for that. Regarding the model of the sheds, I mean, it doesn't matter that much between Wally Watt and Tough Sheds, whichever. It's the bungalow style that we're interested in, and that's what our owners have voted on and approved because it's a material change. I did give a printout of what it would look like to Nicole and Ann when we met, so you know they felt it was okay. If it's important to them to get a window in the back, they're custom sheds, so we can design it however we want. I think the window will probably be obscured by the hedges, but it doesn't matter. If the window makes everybody happy, let's get a window. Regarding the fence is not really part of the sheds. The fence is kind of up to us for what we do with the fence. It had 6 foot before. There's no big stuff protruding above the fence. It's over to the far right side of the sheds, which is not necessarily directly opposite any of the townhomes. So it's not something that they're necessarily looking down into. I think we're probably okay at 6, and just thinking about what could go wrong with this, as you have to do, I think if you put up something that's 8 foot, it's more susceptible, even more susceptible to blowing over. And while I'd like to explore one of the fences that has the opposite kind of posts like this so that the wind can kind of go through it a little bit. I mean, the old one we had is in smithereens. So, you know, if it takes an 8-foot fence to make this work, even though this isn't a fence discussion, it's a shed discussion, if that's what we have to do, we'll do the 8-foot fence if that makes people happy. I think people will be pleased with the landscaping, and I've had the discussion with the landscaper about it. Captiva expressed a preference for the buttonwood. Fine, if that's what everybody likes, let's do the buttonwood. So I think we can make it look quite nice, and I appreciate the opportunity for throwing us together. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Wild?
No need for me to speak this time, thank you.
David Reingold? Gary Starr?
No need.
Aaron Zions?
No need, thank you.
Al Johnson?
Can't resist.
Al Johnson, I have the dubious distinction of living closer to those sheds than anybody, even the people from Yacht and Tennis. And I thought this would be an ideal opportunity to them be good neighbors and move them, because you only have to move them about 50 or 60 feet. I live 40 feet from these things. So moving them just around the corner, have the same access and everything else. I don't care what they look like. If they put a fence up there, that's fine, but I'm still opposed unless they relocate them to the other, I believe the location that you saw before that I brought was, I think, the best option. I just find it kind of borders on idiocy that the only common property you have with a neighbor for that whole complex is right where they've got those sheds. There's other places on the property where they could put them that wouldn't be infringing on anybody's view or anything. So that's my comments.
Would the 6 foot versus the 8 foot make any difference to you?
I can still look right over them.
So the answer is no, it doesn't.
No, I'd like to see a solid thing. I mean, the thing is horrible now, and I've lived there 25 plus years, and I've been looking at the backside of those ugly sheds for 25 years. So it's anything's an improvement. I would like to see it go around the corner where, you know, they're right next to their shuffleboard courts. It'd be a nice area to put them. They'd have their tools and stuff like that in their maintenance, all sitting in the inside their sheds, and it'll be closer to the keys for the handyman room that they have in one of those is at the guard shack, which makes them closer to that, so it'd be more convenient in my opinion. And but anyway, that's my comments. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I just have a card from Stuart Schroed, but the case is not on the agenda.
Stuart?
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
We'll close the public discussion and open for board discussion. I think this is...
I think that they did a great thing. We sat down and got together. And Al's place is right there, but if I heard him correctly, it was 25 years ago, and the sheds have been there for 25 years, so it's not something new. So anything they could do to make it better for him, I think the proposal is going to do that. The shrubbery and the fence. It's my opinion.
Yeah, the reason I asked that about if he cared about 6 or 8 foot is because to me it would seem to me 8 foot without any holes in the middle, and it's what I have in my yard, and it didn't blow over during the hurricane, believe it or not. So that would be but it's not my business because I don't live there. So
I think if they use wood post in the fence supports, that probably won't blow over.
Meaning to go ahead and increase it to...
Yeah, I don't think it would make a difference on the wind.
Between 6 and 8?
Mm-hmm. If you use the wood post, not the core being wood instead of just the fiberglass.
Yeah, I mean, I think the landscaping plan of having 6-foot buttonwoods installed that are fast growing and in alignment with the preferred direction, the style, the materials, if that was conditional based on the fact that they're an approved material, having drainage addressed in the event that those create some drainage problems, and then to me it seems that it needs to just be a solid screened-in fence that's in alignment, I think, with the look. To me, 6 foot or 8 foot would be at their discretion based on what they want to do as neighbors versus a force from us.
I would agree with that as well. I feel like they are going above and beyond to be good neighbors in this instance, and the Buttonwood can surpass that fence, within a year or two as well.
So that could be there, up to them.
Yep. Are we at a point to make a motion?
So how do we put all of that
Okay.
in terms for you guys? We need
Okay, I think
Member Goshaw
I'm gonna,
has got it.
I could take an attempt unless you want to help.
Well, I do have some questions. If you were deciding to have conditions placed against it, such as the installation of the fence, I just wanted to kind of put on the record the length of the fencing. If that is to just be a certain length directly behind the sheds, is it to extend past the sheds? Just from a visual standpoint, would you prefer it to go further and not just having a couple of panels directly behind the fence? Also, landscaping plan, if buttonwoods would suffice for the landscaping plan as proposed just behind, or would you like staff to take some additional look at it when it comes in for permitting? And just to confirm again that there's no exterior lighting that's proposed. That was one thing that staff mentioned in the staff findings report.
I was going to recommend that we have the landscaping reviewed when it's, completed. So I think that's something that we can add in there. My understanding for the fence is was replacing the current fence location that is currently chain link, but it was just improving it. Is that not the case?
Yes.
If you could please verify your plan for the fence so we can ensure that, and the plan that was agreed upon in your joint discussion.
Yeah, so I want to separate out the fence topic. The fence is a pen that goes around maintenance stuff. The fence will be there, excuse me, whether the sheds get approved or not, because that's our maintenance pen, and that's where we keep parking stanchions and ladders laying down on the ground and things like that. Right now, it's all open because the fence blew away in the storm. So that fence will go back, and no matter where the sheds go, the fence pen will still be in that spot. So it's not a fence to go behind the sheds.
Got it. Okay.
It's a fence to keep the maintenance stuff from being seen.
Okay. And the reference to the chain link fence that is
The
currently.
chain link fence is already there, and that's a divider between the properties.
Okay.
That's all. The buttonwoods would go up against that chain link fence and act as a natural barrier and screen.
And the pin that will be replaced that was blown away, is that going in the same location that it previously was?
Yeah, regardless of where the sheds go.
Thank you.
Who owns the chain link fence?
We do. We do. They used to have a fence there. It blew down. They chose not to replace it, so we put up a fence.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, based on the survey that was submitted where the previous sheds were located, they did have the PVC vinyl fence, but it did go behind. And I have a copy of the survey I can bring up on the overhead, just so you have an idea. If they're saying a direct replacement, it does actually come around the back of the sheds and then going from west to east.
Okay.
Just so you have a...
Yeah, if you can put that on the.
Yeah.
So this is actually the PVC fence that went behind the sheds and that kind of went around, just for reference.
Okay, and where's the pen? The pen that's being talked about?
So Captiva would be here,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have a chain link fence that
Yep,
runs
yep.
there.
Is there,
Pen, if I could,
Pen is-
that spot,
yeah.
right here is our landscape pen.
okay.
That's where we have all our materials and stuff stored.
But if So-
there's a fence behind, there's no room for shrubs.
So the initial, just to make sure that we're understanding, the initial proposal had a fence, and the new idea is to, instead of that fence, to have a landscaping plan.
Okay. So landscaping plan, except for the pen, and the pen that is sitting to the west, I don't know if I have my, is this? Okay.
I think that's to the west, I think.
Yep.
Is then what is to be, okay, great. So the west side of the sheds will be where we're talking about a new pen that will have a solid PVC material that is either 6 or 8 feet. Okay.
And just kind of
Thank you.
indicate, so everybody's on the same page.
Yep.
It's just going from here.
Yeah, it would basically surround this, even from the front side, it would come around the front, the sides like that. That would be our pen where we store materials. And she's, yeah, Kristen's correct. This line, the yellow with the red line, that was our original because we didn't have any landscaping back then. So
Yeah.
now the alternative is to put something better than a white wall and give them that kind of design back there. And then, of course, that area here would be the 6-foot high or 8-foot high PVC fence.
Okay.
And nothing to the east side, just confirming.
Well, we would put more buttonwoods here, probably wrap around, just to kind of camouflage those.
Okay, but no additional fencing?
No.
Okay.
Correct.
Just want to make
Can you
sure.
draw some buttonwoods or just tree symbols, just so we can see and when they come in later?
A leaf plate.
No, the little round
She needs a
tree
green
circles, yeah.
pen from, yeah, here
As
you
far
go.
as we're going.
So that would go along, Jane, that would go along the entire fence, correct? The chain link fence?
Not from start to finish, in the vicinity of the shed. And because there's other trees and stuff in there, so it doesn't make sense to have like a hedge that's however many feet that is. But just for, for that section beyond the end of the sheds. And then there's a tree, and then maybe we'll put another plant, but the whole fence will be landscaped. Or
Okay, so you will be landscaping the whole fence there. Okay, thank you.
Will it go along the western perimeter with buttonwoods too, or no trees there?
No, that doesn't interface with Captiva at all.
Well, that's on their property.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
That doesn't make any difference
So
to,
the circles you've drawn for trees, that's the trees that would be going in the buttonwoods?
Yes.
Okay.
So it would extend if, say, this portion here and the fence comes around, Buttonwoods, because it's just showing here that it's joining the back of that shed, I would recommend that it starts here behind the PVC shed and run more east, but where it ends, that would be up to you. I'm just trying to get an overall linear length.
Yep.
To the west, they do have some big trees there right now.
Yeah. And again, I could bring up the PowerPoint if that
So I
helps.
think to cover the distance from the pen through to the other side of the shed, on the south side is what we're talking about of Buttonwoods.
Correct, and it's approximately like 4.8 feet from, again, just showing what was the previous shed or the proposed shed, between that and the property line where the fence is.
And we can have them submit that landscaping design with permitting to confirm.
I just want to make sure I'm.
It's probably 40 feet of buttonwoods, probably. 'Cause
Captiva was indicating they're okay with it, there was a misunderstanding about the fence.
Okay.
Okay. And Kristen, thank you for clarifying. Anything else that you wanted to make sure that we're,
Just the lighting was the other thing. I know we had received prior testimony on that, but that any lighting, if it to be installed, they
No lighting, okay.
would be facing north and not towards Captiva.
okay. Okay. You got this.
All right, I'll give it a shot. Let's see. I'd make a motion to approve case number 24105 on Blind Pass Road. Parcel, maybe I don't need to read all this, 253115. I'm going to skip that part. We're going to go with the case number 24104 with the condition of final review and approval of the materials being used to construct the sheds by zoning
and the fence?
and fence. I would also say that it is contingent on the commitment to do the landscaping as discussed with the Buttonwoods across the south border with Captiva, addressing any drainage issues that may arise, and ensuring that any lighting, should it be considered, would be facing away from Captiva towards the north.
Can you repeat that?
What about the fence?
Would anyone like to second that?
Should we have something in there on the fence height?
Correct. So that would be a minimum fence height of 6
6
foot
feet.
high to create
For
the
the
pen on the western side.
Can we amend this then to add?
It's still,
Okay, I still have
Still
the
open,
floor,
yep.
sort of. And for a minimum of a 6-foot solid fence PVC to be used for the penning of their equipment on the west side of the sheds.
And staff will confirm that if there is a change from the original buildings that were submitted, because they are limited to 2 buildings, each 160 square feet and 10 feet in height, and that is what you're ultimately approving. So any change in the new sheds will have to meet that requirement
Great.
Yes.
with those conditions.
Yes.
Got it.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second, and I do apologize for interrupting you.
No, thank you. Roll call, please.
Member Core,
Yes.
Vice Chair Garshaw,
Yes.
Member Small,
Yes.
Member Causey,
Yes.
Chair Chase.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you all again for your time and collaboration. All right, moving on to action item C, case number 25015. Brandon?
You could pull the PowerPoint up, please. Can we make that full screen? I can work from this. Okay. Good afternoon, Brandon Berry, Senior Planner. This is variance case number 25015. It's an unnecessary and undue hardship variance for the property at 3115 West Maritana Drive. The applicants are requesting variance relief to restore a zoning lot that exists today to its original platted lots, those being lots 7 and lots 8 of Block 21 of Don Cesar Place. Both of these lots, if restored, will lack the minimum 60-foot width required, with 48.18 feet on the southern lot, Lot 7, 50.33 feet on the northern lot, Lot 8. And both of these lots are proposed for subdivision or lot split for the purpose of single-family development. This is made pursuant to the RU2 zoning district standards, Land Development Code Section 9.6A2. So there. Here's an aerial of the property. It shows the property as it exists today. There is currently a single-family residence on the parcel that spans the 2 platted lots. There is a pool at the back, and there is also a single-family dock on the owned waterfront strip to the western side. This is a common makeup for properties in the Don Cesar neighborhood. Here's an existing survey of the property, again showing those improvements. You can see the dock on the western owned 10-foot waterfront strip. This is a platted reserve strip that was provided through the platting of the neighborhood. It is currently owned in whole by the residential property owner. This is showing the proposed lot layout. The applicant is proposing to completely demolish the existing improvements on the site and split the lots as proposed. You can see Lot 8, the platted Lot 8 on the top. This is to the north side. It has roughly 6,400 square feet. It would have an average width, this is average of the front and the rear property lines, of just over 50 feet and a depth of 128 feet. Lot 7 would have just under 6,200 square feet in area, an average width of just over 48 feet, and a depth also of 128 feet. So going through the request detail.
Right.
Yes.
Could you go back?
Yes.
And just what about the easement on the other side where the docks are?
So those weren't
What's
count.
that split?
Those, and I'll get into that in a moment. I haven't received information from the applicant. I'm assuming a direct split based on the upland property. So going into detail on the request, the city's land development code allows for these lot splits to be processed, presuming that the underlying platted lots meet the required lot area and width. The land development code does not allow for variances to lot area. The applicant has met the lot area requirement for both of these platted lots as proposed, and as currently exists based on the underlying plat. They will both meet the 6,000 square foot RU2 zoning district requirement. This is also a comprehensive plan requirement, so they would not be able to proceed with the variance if this were not to be met. Both lots will meet that requirement. Both are deficient to the 60-foot lot width standard. As I mentioned before, the northern lot will be just over 50 feet in width, average width. Southern lot will be just under 50 feet, 48.2 approximately feet in width. This is a fairly standard condition for lots in the Don Cesar neighborhood. Most platted lots do not meet the RU2 district requirements. That is also the typical standard for a developed lot in the neighborhood, being one platted lot or just larger. The condition that the applicant currently has, which is 2 platted lots combined together, is not typical for the neighborhood on average. As I mentioned before, they would be splitting the existing lot to the exact platted lots based on the underlying plat, being lots 7 and 8, and they are both deficient to the minimum lot width. Here's some photographs of the site. You can see here the existing residence on the property. This would be completely demolished prior to the lot split commencing. This is showing the existing developed dock across the street. It does meet the requirements for a residential dock. You can see here the 2 individual slips as well as the layout of the dock. This is showing toward the center of the photograph the existing conditions that would be in place for the northern lot if the lot is split as a direct extension of the upland residence. If it's just split as a continuation of that lot line, which is the typical condition for that neighborhood, it tends to be the waterfront is associated based on the upland residence. You can see there are a fairly extensive depth of mangroves in that location. This is brought up in the staff report as well, but to summarize, there is a very limited waterway width at this location looking over to Fuller Island. This is an estimate, but there's approximately 140 feet in waterway width at this location. Based on the land development code, this would allow for a dock of approximately 35 feet in depth. It appears that the mangrove stands do extend out further. Again, this is based on an aerial. It is an estimate, but that appears to be the distance. I did speak with the county about what would occur if these lots were split. Were they to be just a continuation of the upland residential parcels? They did say that a 4-foot strip of mangroves would be able to be cleared out to allow for a walkout at this location. However, given that distance, it's unclear that a wet slip or a boat lift would be able to be installed adjacent to those mangroves. So there may be potential for a walkout, but without a variance, it does not appear that there could be a slip established, at least a permanent slip established within that waterway, given the depth of the mangroves. So I wanted to point this out, and I'll bring it up briefly in a moment as well. As far as the upland property split is concerned, staff does not have significant concerns. The southern lot would be slightly narrower than a typical lot based on the average for the neighborhood. However, as I mentioned before, the standard width of a lot in the Don Cesar Place neighborhood is approximately 50 feet. The southern lot would be 48 feet in width, which appears it's a fairly imperceptible difference. One of the items of testimony that I would like the applicant to provide is that if these lots were to be split as proposed back to their platted dimensions, that they do, and they have assessed and found them viable for development. We want to ensure that this split does not lead to the need for further variances based on required setbacks, impervious surface limitations, other development limitations that would need to bring this case back in the future for either amendment or for new variances. I also have some concerns, as brought up in the previous slide, related to development on the adjacent waterfront strip. I want to ensure that if it's separated, whether it's a direct extension or some other kind of arrangement, that there be assurance that it will remain with the residential primary property. Although seawalls can be developed independent of a residential zoning lot, the applicant would not be able to have a dock unless it was associated with an upland residence. So I do want to ensure that that remains in place to prevent any issues down the line. As mentioned before, shown on the aerials, I would also like them to discuss the proposed development for a dock at the Lot 8, the northern waterfront, given the extensive depth of mangroves at the seawall, the limited waterfront width for permanent mooring encroachment beyond the mangroves. I did briefly speak with the owner prior to this meeting. I understand that they are looking to potentially orient the dock toward the northern part of that waterfront to avoid some of the major impacts to the mangroves. That would require a signature from the neighbor, and as with the lot development in general, I just want to ensure that they've either had a discussion with that neighbor or something along those lines to avoid this case needing to come back in the future. So staff recommends one condition if this case is to be approved by the board. We do ask that both a building permit for demolition of the structure as well as an initiation of the lot split occur within 1 year of issuance of this approval. Typically, these cases are tied to the inaction of a building permit because there's a demolition, but there's also a need to split these lots formally through the property appraiser. We would like to make sure that that takes place within a year of this approval should it be approved. The board also has the option to deny this case or continue the case pending submittal of additional information. That is all I have. I know the applicant as well as their attorney is present. Do you have any questions for me?
No. Thank you, Brandon. The applicant would like to come forward. Thank you. Excuse me. My name is Lauren Rubenstein. I am with Hill Ward Henderson here on behalf of the applicants. Thank you, Brandon, for the presentation and for the very comprehensive staff report. Appreciate that. I do believe a clean version of the applicant's narrative was distributed. I know in the backup there was some redlining, which may have been confusing, so we want to make sure you had a clean version to look at. I want to start by going through the criteria that you'll be looking at for this hardship variance. The first thing, of course, is that special conditions and circumstances exist, which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved. And what's really, I think important about this case is that these platted lots were platted back in 1925. Almost the entire neighborhood is still the existing platted lots. This was well before even the city was, St. Pete Beach was incorporated, and before there were any restrictions related to lot size and lot width. So the original platted lots do not meet the required lot width. They do meet the required lot size, which, as Brandon explained, is certainly very important on your comprehensive plan as well as your code, the way it's written. But what is being proposed is really just going back to those original platted lots. Another thing I'd like to mention is that my clients, nor anyone a predecessor of them, has ever actually officially combined these. There's no unity of title. Certainly they've been developed across. They've never been replatted. So our position really is that if this home was demolished, there are two existing platted lots, which under your code could be developed. They certainly weren't the ones that created that circumstance. That goes to your next criteria. Again, they didn't replat, they didn't combine them back when this was developed as a single parcel, if you will. That looks like that went back all the way to 1967 based on online records, and that was in your staff report from Brandon as well. And so that was even before those minimum lot width requirements were adopted by the city. So again, there was probably no intention or any awareness that one day they couldn't be back to their original platted lots, and that's exactly what they are seeking in this request. Your next criteria of literal interpretation of the provisions of the LDC deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other property owners in the neighborhood. Again, any property owner in the RU2 zone Don Cesar Place neighborhood that owns
one original platted lot, despite it not meeting the width requirements, can build a single-family home. And what's being requested is to go back to those platted lots for the purpose of single-family development, nothing else. So they are not looking for anything that somebody else is not allowed to do. And the literal interpretation right now, based on staff's interpretation of it, is that it can't be done without this variance. The hardship was not deliberately created to create a use or a structure that's not otherwise allowed. Again, same thing we've kind of gone over. The lots are the original platted lots. They're looking for single-family homes, just like everything else in the neighborhood, which really will go with the character of that neighborhood as it is already developed. The applicant's desire or ability to achieve greater financial return or maximum financial return from his property does not constitute the hardship. That is true. Yes, the applicants did start looking at this when they actually bought the property. And one of the reasons they did was because they knew that it wasn't up to FEMA standards. It wasn't compliant. They knew if there was a storm, there could be a problem. And if it needed to be redeveloped, they may need to split the lots in order to financially do so. Unfortunately, as we are all very well aware and have suffered personally, they had to go through the storms this year. Their home is damaged, and in order to rebuild and to do so and make it economically feasible so that they can build up to current codes and maybe beyond to make sure the resiliency is there in the event of another storm, they are seeking this lot split to do so. So it's not for financial gain, it's really in order to be able to utilize the lots in the way that they originally intended. Granting the variance does not convey any special treatment. It's the same treatment to the applicant as to the other owners. Again, if you look at the existing Don Cesar Place neighborhood, you'll see that most of the lots are the original platted lots with the single-family homes. This is the minimum variance that could be requested. Both staff agreed with us as well. It's just looking to go back to the original platted lots. We're not looking for any additional changes there. And finally, staff concurred that it is in harmony with the Land Development Code and consistent with the comprehensive plan, and that they would be compatible with the neighborhood as well. Now, Brandon did bring up several questions that he had. A lot of those questions have to do with the waterfront, some of which I don't know is relevant to this variance request. It is a separate platted strip. They are looking at where they would be splitting that. What they do guarantee is that, yes, of course, those would stay with the upland residential interests. They will not be sold off separately. They would stay with those upland residential interests. But because of the existing docks that's there, they may not extend the lot line exactly out through where you would split it evenly. They may want to deed, an extra 10 feet to one of those residential lots. But that's something that hasn't been, finalized by any means. This is the first step in that. So I put that out there. So yes, it's not going to be separated. That doesn't really go to any criteria in the code as far as minimum lot size or anything like that. But certainly it would stay with that residential upland interest. It just would depend whether it matches the exact dimensions or whether there might be a little jog there, which would be in the deeded language, of course. One of the other things they wanted my client to address, and I am happy to have them come up if you want to hear it from them, but I have talked to them about the buildability of these lots and that they are developable based on your code. And they have spoken with contractors. They are confident that they can both be developed as single-family homes. I cannot guarantee that a future owner or somebody else may not run into a situation where they require a variance. I certainly understand the city wanting to make sure and somehow have on record that there will never be a variance, but I think that you all sitting up there probably know as well as I do that we can't predict the future. I don't know every pipe that's in the ground. I don't know everything that could come up. So it's not something that could be guaranteed. But again, these are platted lots that are similar to every other platted lot in that neighborhood that's built with single-family homes. A conforming single-family home can be built on these properties. I want to make sure there's no other questions that you had as well on that. But I think those were the main things that I heard Brandon bring up. I do have, like I said, the property owners here with me. If you have any questions for me or for them, we'd be happy to answer those.
I have some questions.
Yes.
Was the house that's there, the original house, was it substantially damaged, or are they living in the house, or is it?
Substantially.
You don't need to come up. They're too short.
Well, my question is, are you living in the house now?
No.
If you can provide your name and address for the record.
Andrew Rosenthal, 3115 West Maritime Drive. Yet we are not living in the house. The house does have substantial damage. We did not get a substantial damage letter because of, I guess, some people will appraise their house again to get a higher value. The cost of fixing ours, because we have crawl space, was underestimated. So reality is it is substantially damaged. If we were to go and try to get permanent.
Would you be wanting to do this had the hurricanes not happened?
We had contemplated that it might be something that we'd want to do, but what we've actually realized is that living in the house as it was a great option for us, because it doesn't add any more money for us to have to rebuild to do anything, and for the two of us, it was a fine house.
And there's a pool behind whichever, the south lot, I guess that is. Is that going away too then? I mean,
The pool will be removed
it will.
as well.
And just while you're here, I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Dan Rosenthal.
Dan, and your expectation is that you would be doing the demolition and be getting this replatted for the two properties within a year?
So it's not replatting?
I'm sorry, what is the word?
All we have to do is get a letter from you.
Breaking up the two lots.
My name's Suzanne Levine, 311
Lot split, Dan, is
Well,
nice.
it's two lots already, but it's one parcel number. So we need a new parcel number to be attached to lot number 7.
So we'll get a new address within the next year, yes. And
All of that is planned within a year.
We've got a demo permit in process. It's just there was, it's the way there's all sorts of programs and FEMA and everything else. We start to say, well, what can we do? So.
No concerns with the condition that this be accomplished within a year's time, in other words?
Those two things, no.
Okay. Has there been any conversations with your neighbors in regards to potential dock placement or just the project in general?
So with regards to the project in general, yes, on both neighbors, our north and our south neighbor. We've had discussions about the dock as well, because one of the things, some people don't like their mangroves. We love our mangroves because our seawall is actually intact. The neighbor to the north is starting to lose their seawall. And if we were to put our path through the mangroves towards the north, we'd only be cutting through 5 or 6 feet of mangroves as opposed to around 30. And with regards to that other thing on the dock, I permitted the dock that we have existing, and the concern that Brandon has, and I think we have worked through this once before on my other one, is that it's really that you're allowed to 25% of the navigable waterway, which is not including the mangroves, and you actually start counting from the end of the mangroves as to where you can put it out. So we believe, based on current conditions, that with the exception of the sign-off, well, 2 different sign-offs, the riparian right sign-off for it coming closer to their property, in addition to a riparian right sign-off where I think the county requires that you can only go out as far as half of your lot width at the water without getting a sign-off for riparian rights. And that actually would be the limitation, that we would have to have a sign-off from our neighbor for riparian rights. And we've spoken to her, and we believe that they would be agreeable with doing that. We have a good relationship on both sides. And we did the dock on the other side. We had no issue with getting that. And certainly the southern neighbor to that new lot would agree, because that's us.
Sorry, I didn't track on that. So what would you have to get approval from your neighbor from, are you stating?
When you get a dock permit, if it goes outside of the center 1/3 of the property, if it's on any closer to that, to their property line, or if you extend out from the seawall more than 50% of the width at the waterway, you need to get a sign-off from
both, that one you need both neighbors because of
Okay.
the riparian rights.
It's very specific to any placement of a dock.
Because
Okay.
half of that lift
Thank you.
would, as Brandon pointed out, would hit the mangroves. Now, the mangroves do come in a bit there, so there is an opportunity for us to be able to do something there, but we do believe that with the exception of those two things, that we are actually get dock permitting without any issue.
And I know the state of seawalls in the area in general are not great. So you're stating yours is in good condition?
Well, ours is at 2.5 feet. The
Okay.
original-
So the height is not to the current ordinance of the 5-foot nav, but
Our
it,
cemented pieces that are in there are in great condition because we've had mangroves
okay.
forever. But
When-
the northern neighbor, once you get past those mangroves, there's a section of no mangroves. Those are becoming dilapidated and that's starting to sink in. So
When was your seawall done?
there was no seawall done on either side of us. It's all
No, your seawall. When was it built?
1920.
Your seawall is an original seawall.
When we built our dock, it was just prior to the seawall height changing from 4 feet to 5 feet. And we requested a variance to be able to build it at 5 feet, anticipating the seawalls being raised.
Yeah.
But then we go out with our dock and we have it sloped down so that you're at a closer level to the water. But
But you're saying you have an original seawall from the 20s?
Yes.
Then I don't understand how it could be at 2.5 feet or 4 feet and be in great condition.
Because it has the mangroves that are sitting in it and
Like
holding it in.
protecting it.
So we have grass on one side and the mangroves which are pushing
Okay.
that wall in.
Well,
And it's like.
I don't know. Okay, I've seen it around the neighborhood. The originals don't look
For the
great.
neighborhood, based on whatever the comprehensive plan is and everything else, you know, we could have done that when we did the dock. It wouldn't have made sense though at that point because, as you probably know as well, we're looking to see how are we going to pay for that. We
Yeah.
get county money or city money, we don't know. But as it stands, we feel comfortable with that, given that everybody else is lower than the 5 or 6 feet that's been
Yeah.
required.
And what I would like to just highlight is, obviously, there has been a lot of thought and contemplation about the dock and future development and all of that. But certainly, when any lots are split, if this variance is granted and the lots are split, there are codes and ordinances, both city and countywide, that are going to control the placement of that dock. And certainly, they would have to comply with those codes. And obviously, they have thought long and hard about that and what those possibilities look like.
But would you be open to the condition being that the seawall gets replaced to being a 5-foot nav seawall with reconstruction?
Only because I don't think that's a fair thing for anybody to have to do that, given that we don't know what's going to be happening with the entire neighborhood. And if we do it and the neighbors don't, their lot is already falling in to the water. And if I do that, I'm going to have a return that's hugely large because their land goes in. Because we're going to have the water coming in king tides. Several times a month in the right seasons, we have water. You can't leave your house because you can't do that. So I don't think that would be reasonable. Yes, we're willing to rebuild the seawalls along with everybody else and do it in the same manner that the entire neighborhood would. But at this point, it doesn't really make sense. And the other option that I think we might have is Betty did is the sort of the natural seawall thing because we do have a full set, the biggest set of mangroves of anybody, quite frankly, in that neighborhood already there. So, you know, there might be an opportunity for that. I don't know how that works.
As far as I know, the living shoreline you're talking about still needs a seawall. It's just how they work together compatibly.
Right, and ours does, and I imagine we wouldn't be
You have
to
a
do.
storm drain, and then you have it down, and then it's falling, and then it's protected, and then it's around the corner.
Understood.
But just to address the damage part of things, I mean, it's a 1948 house that was hodgepodge, and so some is crawl space, some is slab. We had over 4 feet of water, couldn't get in the house for 3-4 days, so black mold, and 23-year-old air conditioning units, 3 of them. Like, it's just not sustainable nor achievable to renovate and comply and to be able to withstand future storms. We're going to be blown out. We've lost half of our stuff.
Yep.
Next year we won't be able to do it. If it wasn't this year, it's going to be next year. One other thing I want to mention just was on the 10-foot strip piece. The concern that I thought that Brandon had as well is as you go out our property line, it hits our existing dock by a very small bit. I was trying not to have that happen, just because I thought maybe it shouldn't. And so our only anticipation of moving that would be if we have to move that so that it can stay, or we can get a permanent easement or riparian right agreement through deed, but that would be the only reason we'd want to move that. And as it turns out, the northern property is 60 feet at the inside property line, close to 70, 65 or 70 feet at the waterway, where the southern property is 50 feet at the waterway.
So
there's a lot of it.
which one would you sell if you were going to do this?
We would sell the north. We're going to keep, I don't know if you
The
know,
bigger one is where you're keeping.
as you walked in. So we're going to keep the southern lot.
With the dock coming around.
And it's the smaller lot as well. I mean, the other lot is actually a nicer lot.
The northern lot?
5 feet of the waterway, just so that there's never an issue of that we're sitting on somebody else's riparian right. And, you know, I don't know exactly how that language works, nor how that would fit into the split exactly, because that's in the deeded language on the individual deeds, and we're going to have to write that deeded language out. It's going to be lot 8 and this many feet of the adjacent seawall or something like that.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else here that would like to speak on behalf or in opposition to this case? Any cards, City Clerk? No. No? All right, then we'll close the open discussion and open to board conversation.
Well, go ahead, Dan, sorry. This is going to require, the idea then eventually is to sell this lot and build another house. Another house is going to require more sewer capacity, it's going to require more water, it's like everything else when you add another house. And we're already sort of stressed out in the city with overcapacity. Is this a good idea?
I think the counter to that would be that there are originally 2 plots, and the neighborhood was designed for there to be, 2 houses.
Right, but that was in 1925 or something.
Correct. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. That's the way it was, and I don't think it's going to tax the sewer systems and everything else with the way that we've been moving forward on that. My question is the waterfront. Was Brandon, did you address that? Does the waterfront get divided equally between the 2 lots? Should it?
That's
on the second lot, if the person who gets that, they're going to have 50% of their lot that they can put a dock out, correct?
So typically, it's a direct extension. I can't say that's the case for every single lot in the neighborhood, but that tends to be the case. It's not necessary for density or any other kind of development purpose. So if the applicant wanted to move the line 5 feet one direction or the other, I wouldn't have any concerns with that. What I was mentioning before was I didn't want to create a condition where a variance would be necessary for the dock by the lot being split in an unusual way and them having not engaged with the northern neighbor and creating a condition where there would be a need to come back to this board for a further variance because of action taken today. It sounds like they have engaged the northern neighbor. They're, of course, the southern neighbor if this split's approved. So it sounds like there's a path forward in that regard. But it doesn't necessarily need to be a direct extension of the upland.
I mean, I think this is a pretty creative way to get around, needing to rebuild and being able to have the financial support to do that. They're obviously in a unique position to have the double lot to have that flexibility. And now we'll have 2 homes that are built resilient for future hurricanes as well. So I see that, as a positive, particularly since they're not looking to change the plot size in any way from the historical, sizes. So I feel like they're really asking for the minimal need to get their project underway.
It's a fair ask, I really do.
And I agree with Brandon's suggested condition on the year timeline, because we want these things, to move forward as well, and they seemed to have no concern with that.
Agree. And, the neighborhood
needs help.
Has a lot of different, probably, lot sizes, I can say. So knowing that it still meets the minimum lot size, even though we're plus or minus
Like 2 feet, something
Well,
like that.
maybe 10 feet. It's still in alignment and character with the rest of the neighborhood, that as long as the design and development doesn't require coming back for the home itself to require variances, it seems like that is reasonable.
Are we ready for motion?
Sure.
Yeah? Member Small, would you like to make a motion?
I'd make a motion that the board approve case 25015 as amended.
With condition?
With the conditions that Brandon set forth.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Well, the condition of the year,
Yeah.
and was there another condition besides the year?
There's no other formal conditions. There was-
Okay, so just the year. I would second that, yeah.
Roll call, please.
Member Small?
Yes.
Member Causey?
Yes.
Member Core?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garshaw?
Yes.
Chair Chase?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Moving on to case number 25033. This one's yours, Kristen?
It is. Brandon, can you give me the clicker? Thank you. Yeah.
This variance is wrong with all the river conditions. It's like a sunset.
Okay. Moving on to our last variance case.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Are we doing this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's still here, our applicant and owner is still here. And then we have another item for discussion after.
All good.
Okay. So moving a little south on to Pass Grill variance case number 25033. The property is located at 3103 First Street West. The request is for a practical difficulty variance. Stuart Schroed is requesting a variance for the proposed replacement and installation of an 8x10 or 80 square feet maximum square footage of 8-foot-high residential storage building that has a proposed front yard setback of 50.3 feet from the front property line, where 60 feet is required, and looking for relief from Land Development Code Section 6.13B4. Here is the property. It's outlined in red, and it's located in the RM PAG Pass Grill Overlay District. An existing survey of the property. It is an interior property, and it's improved with a one-story dwelling with a shell driveway and a residential storage building. Here's just an enlargement with the survey with the proposed improvement. Again, 60 foot is required and 50.3 feet is proposed. Just a little bit more detail that was included in the staff findings report. The size is compliant. It would just be the front yard setback requirement. It is important to note that this new structure is already in place on the property. The applicant has submitted a variance request related to building permit number 2401809, which was mistakenly issued on August 23rd of 2024 without receiving zoning approval. Zoning approval was denied based on the front yard setback, but the permit was subsequently issued by error. While the applicant initially applied for the storage building, the zoning review was denied due to the noncompliance with the required front yard setback. However, the building permit was erroneously issued, and an issue that was discovered when an inspection was requested, just to give you a background. This was supplied by the applicant. This was the previous storage building that was there, and this is the recently installed storage building. Photographs bringing you onto the property. So noticing was completed as required, and legal ad published with notices mailed on March 12th and the sign posted on March 18th on the property. This is just a view from the front property line. I will note there is a serious line of hedges that would be immediately to my back, but I wouldn't have been able to take the picture if I actually did it from the street. So it's adequately shielded, for sure. This is just one close-up of the shed, or the storage building, my bad. This is a view actually from the alley. So you're seeing the rear of the little bungalow with the shed on the left. And just another view of from the side property line. So as part of the staff findings report, the applicant should be prepared to provide their own testimony and respond to comments that were included in the staff findings report. The applicant should provide testimony as to the materials to be stored on or within the building. If the board does not grant the variance, the applicant should provide testimony if an alternate location exists where the goods and materials currently located in the building could be stored, or an alternate location that would meet the required setback. And the applicant should provide testimony as how the stormwater runoff shall be directed and maintained on the property to ensure compliance with the land development code. And there are your motion options. We did receive a late entry, which I did provide to you, a letter in support from an adjacent neighbor, and the applicant is here as well.
Great. Any questions for Kristen?
So there is a shed there now?
Correct.
Is that the original shed?
So there was a previous shed, if I go back.
Right, but the one we're looking at there,
That exists now.
the one on the right,
The one on the right is currently in place.
that's there.
Mhm.
So I don't understand the way.
So it's a replacement of a shed
No, I
that was
understand.
there.
I got that.
But I could not find any previous variance approval that was granted
Oh, I see.
for the location. Again, it doesn't meet that front yard setback requirement.
But it's exactly where the other one was.
It's exactly where the other one was.
It's not any bigger, or, well, maybe it's a little bit, well, it's designed differently, but.
Yeah. Mhm.
But it's not egregiously bigger or anything like that.
Correct. The square footage meets, the height meets land development compliance, it's the location.
It's better looking, too.
And how was this caught, I guess, in terms of?
Inspection.
At time of inspection, that was called in.
And then it was noted that zoning hadn't
Correct.
had any, okay,
Yep.
got it.
Yeah, zoning did do their review. It was denied based on that, but
Okay.
The permit was still issued. We're
Correct.
all human.
yeah.
Great. Would the applicant like to come forward? You can please state your name and address for record.
Stuart Schroed, 3103 First Street South, St. Pete Beach. 33706.
If you can just share your explanation for the project and request.
The old shed was pretty tattered, and I went to Tough Shed and I said, hey, I'd like to put a new shed in, and they said okay. They got the permit to do it. They installed it. Then they said, well, hold on, it's in the wrong spot. It's not, see, because we have like a 10 or 12 foot easement in the front. So it's actually 60 feet from the road, but it's not 60 feet from my property line because there's a easement in the front.
The right-of-way?
The right-of-way, yes. So that, I don't know if that had anything to do with why it was approved or not approved or whatever, but, so basically I have a shed that they weren't allowed to finish, put a roof on, everything else, so here we are.
Okay.
So,
Is there any setback rule in the back of I drove down the alley behind your house to look at it. Does it have to be set back from the alley at all?
No, it has no rear yard setback requirements or side yard setback requirements, but it's my understanding that the applicant actually utilizes the alley parking. So if he were to locate it further towards the back in compliance with the 60-foot, he'd have like a 12-foot long or in-depth parking space where an average one is about 18 or 19 or 20. So I think that's also part of his testimony as why he's requesting the location that it's in.
I couldn't park there without cutting down quite a bit of stuff in the front, because I couldn't do it in the back, I don't have room.
You said it didn't have a roof on it.
It has just a plastic sheet on it.
Right now, that's what it is?
During inspections.
Because they won't finish it without.
Can we see the picture of it again?
Variance.
Sure.
So,
I could have the PowerPoint.
kind of stopped it right in the middle.
I could also give you a better picture.
I don't know if one of the pictures shows, there's the roofing on the side, on the ground, right there.
Oh, I see.
It looks like it does have a roof.
It does look like it, yeah. And when I drove by it, it looked like
They
it.
called me and said, hey, it looks like it's got a roof on it. I said, okay, I don't know how. But they put just a thin plastic metal.
Yeah, I got it. I see.
Keep it from getting ruined,
And that shed is in the same location as the previous shed? Okay.
Out of curiosity, Kristen, so the company that builds the shed, they pull the permit, and so when zoning was denied, would that have gone to the shedding, to?
Yes.
That would not have gone to the homeowner, like they wouldn't have had
I
that?
could check.
In general, though? Usually that
it depends
communication is
if we-
between the
if-
contractor.
If we have the owner's information, not always do we have it, or contact email. Can say I would apply, do both, just so everybody's aware, but it's not always the case.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any other questions for the applicant? No. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
If there's anybody else here that would like to speak on behalf or in opposition of this case, now would be the time. Did we get any cards? Okay. Hearing none, we'll close public comment and open for board discussion. I think this is a case of, human error on the city's part and a prettier shed and,
Seems this comes up a lot where we don't know what the original, we did this one of these last meeting where nobody can remember what the original plot was because it was way back before. So this is just going to keep happening from time to time.
part of being in a
So we have to use good sense.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should say yes to it. I don't see any reason not to.
Yeah, I'm
If a motion is
sympathetic.
appropriate. I'd be happy to-
I'm sympathetic that this happens from time to time. So I thank you for going through the steps to make it right, and in alignment with, yeah.
I wasn't getting your emails. She took the time to call me and go, hey,
Uh-huh.
are you coming? Or what's I'm like, I haven't seen any emails, so thank you very much.
Oh, good.
I
We have
believe
incredible city staff.
his,
that's for sure.
his email has a spam blocker on our Sandy Beach. It's kind of what we figured out. So I'm like, you know what? I will just, yeah.
All right. Okay,
Yeah.
Good. We have a motion.
Yeah, I would make a motion to approve case number 25033. Yeah, stormwater, I guess the one recommendation I see here, maybe before I hit pause on that, stormwater runoff shall be directed and maintained on the property to ensure its compliance. Okay, so that wasn't discussed, but I'm just before,
Seashell,
yeah,
and the building itself is on
okay.
concrete stanchions. So
Okay.
there's no,
But the condition being there that, and you would, whatever water runoff would need to be maintained in compliance with that land development code is something that you would look at ensuring occurs as with your vendor?
sure.
Yeah, okay, so that's, I think, okay, so let me restate, then I make a motion to approve case number 25033 with the staff recommendation and direction and condition that the stormwater runoff should be directed and maintained on the property to ensure compliance with land development code.
We have a motion.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Member Causey?
Yes.
Member Core?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garshaw?
Yes.
Member Small?
Yes.
Chair Chase?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, our final case for today is a progress report on case number 23072.
Give you this, Christine emailed it to me like right before the meeting.
Okay.
A letter in support, and so I didn't have a chance to email it to you, but I wanted to give it to you, hand it to you in person.
Thank you.
So you could
That's
reach out and say,
awesome.
hey, thanks.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.
My neighbors.
Yep, exactly. Have a good one. I'll be in touch with you. I have to write a development order and stuff, and I'll be in touch.
Given we're looking for a progress report from the applicant, I think we can go ahead and move forward and receive that update.
Good afternoon. Kyle Bass on behalf of applicant Red, White, and Booze. We are here. This is case number 23072. We were awarded pursuant to a development order number 23072. We were awarded back in October of 2024 a hardship variance to do some updates and upgrades to the building. There were different conditions that were put on that, and we were granted our hardship variance. And one of the conditions was that we come back on a periodic schedule to give updates and status checks. We came back a few months ago, and we were permitted to, well, I guess a few months after. I think we came earlier this year. And we were permitted to continue working on the project and to make progress. Was it earlier this year or was it last year?
It was the beginning of this year.
Yeah, this year.
I think it was last year.
It was actually October 30th of 2024. We did 120 days, which was to be in February. Due to a clerical error, we put it to March.
Okay, thank you for.
Yeah, so this will be the second time we're coming back for status check. There was a communication oops, and by the time we got that clarified, it was too late to move schedules around, so we had to bump it to this month. We should have been here last month, to be completely transparent. That said, I do have an update, and the city, Ms. Coman just provided me with the printout of all the open permits, and so if we can go through them one by one, or if there's any specific questions, I can answer those, or I could just keep going.
Go ahead. I mean, I think what we're most interested to understand is where you are in adhering to the conditions that we had laid out with the project.
Sure. So I did bring our contractor here so he could speak to it more directly if there's any specific questions about what portions of the project, like where we are specifically with what's going in and that kind of idea. I can tell you, though, just kind of broad spectrum, more of a 1,000-foot view. Yes, there have been setbacks. Obviously, we had the storm issues. We had the some material supply delays, but given those delays, which I think are customary in construction projects, we are relatively on schedule and we are moving forward. Again, if you want more specifics about what portion of the project we're in, I can hand the floor over to our contractor.
Yeah, since there's so many open, I mean, I just think it would be good.
I can address some of those right now if you would prefer. So the 2024 number 2401573 regarding the dock piling, we've got to get in contact with the company. It was our understanding that the company was working on getting that closed. It's supposed to be closed, and we thought it was closed. And so we've got to get the company to close out their permit.
So the work's done?
Correct.
You have final?
Work is done. My understanding that there has been a final inspection, or there's supposed to have been a final inspection, and the company just hasn't gotten it scheduled yet.
Okay.
These are the docks that are already in, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and they're being used every day.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, if the final inspection hasn't happened, then they wouldn't.
That would be a concern.
Okay. That's the confusion, is why hasn't it been, so we've got to get back on the phone.
Can we just look in the system and see if final approvals on this one, Kristen, or do you already know?
I'm assuming it's not, because Kristen, you just handed me this today, as of yesterday. So
Well, sometimes the final inspection does get passed, and they sit there open for a little longer than you anticipate. So that's why that would be important to know. Sometimes just a matter of paperwork. So it'd be good to know if it's on the city part or if it's on your contractor.
It would be fantastic.
But you can just go into the system and we can see that pretty quick.
Just for me to address the next one while you're looking at that, or you want me to wait?
Go ahead.
Okay. So the next one I think is easy. This is the generator. This is permit number 2402122. We have that scheduled. They're coming out. They were supposed to come out earlier this week. They got bumped, and they are coming out tomorrow to do the final inspection, or to
do the work, or you're done with the work?
to do the work. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Is there a difference in the wattage between the one that you have and the new one?
Yes, they had to upgrade to 100 watt as opposed to, I believe the previous one was a 50 watt.
Yeah.
So it wasn't sufficient enough to run the entire restaurant, and when they would hook everything up, the generator shut off. The series from 2022, so the shadow box fence, permit number 2202218, that should be closed. That is regarding the fence that was installed, my understanding, between the wharf and my client's restaurant. So that should have been closed years ago.
Because that permit date is from 2022.
2022.
Yeah, it still shows open though.
Yeah, October of 2022. So that should have been closed. I'm not sure why that's showing that it's open, frankly. And then the same with the with the Ecoton, these are the AC units. Again, we're unaware that these were both open. This is permit numbers 2201-633 and 2202-556. Both of those are also from the second half of 2022. Those also should have been closed. And again, we're not sure why they haven't been closed.
Are those units, were they saved in the storm, or did those?
I don't have the specifics on that. I don't know.
Just curious.
I know the restaurant sustained some.
I can comment on that one. It looks like the mechanical final was canceled by the contractor on 4/24/23, and also a fire final needs to be scheduled.
And who needs, is that?
The contractor.
Contractor, okay, that's
Mhm.
right. That's what I was afraid of.
Yep.
So we need to get back in touch with our contractor from back then, to get
Yeah, because
that.
all of it's being operated then, I'll say
Correct.
illegally, because you're not
I will not.
closed on this.
Yes, that's a problem. Well, that's why we thought it was closed. So Kristen, thank you for handing me this, because this is news.
Okay, we have
Not
one
good
more
news.
set of status.
And then the cooler. So this is, I don't know why this is a two-part, but the open permit is 2300540. This is the walk-in cooler, and I just spoke with my client today, and we are working on getting that issue closed currently as well.
So one of those things with the open cooler is it needs to be shielded.
Correct.
And I still haven't received anything on how that's going to be accomplished.
That was shielded pursuant to, like with siding, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, like, it just can't be hanging out there on top of the monolithic pour. Like, I think there was going to be a design change from, there was supposed to be cedar shakes that were supposed to, or planks, to shield that or to kind of enclose that. And then there was going to be a design change, but I haven't received.
Is this outside of the building
Yes,
itself?
in the parking lot.
In the parking lot?
Mm-hmm.
So the cooler was permitted, the pad that it's on was permitted, but part of the issue is that because they're redoing the restaurant pursuant to this hardship variance, they want the side of that cooler, the siding, to match. And so that's part of the issue. They haven't been able to do the siding of the building yet, which is part of the reason why it's not still open.
Why haven't,
Is there-
been able to do the side of the building?
They haven't been, do you want to speak on that? They haven't been able to do the side of the building because of where we are in the project, and we had the delays. So the siding is it next, is it April, or is it, yeah, you can come up and speak to that. You know that better than me, the scheduling.
If you can provide your name and address for the record, please.
John Sapir with Randmar Development, 12645 Racetrack Road, Tampa, Florida, 33626. The general contractor, not on all those other ones. This is on the remodel, we'll call it, the fascia and everything. The siding is going to be ordered here probably this week. We had a slight delay because after the storm, the owner said, you know something? I think it'd be better to put impact windows in now. So we are in for a revision or to add the impact windows on this permit, which I would think it should be just a rubber stamp. So we're in for that. And of course, the windows need to be in before I can put the siding on, because you butt into the windows and we need to get an inspection on the windows.
Is part of your remit to also do the siding to enclose the cooler?
Yeah, and that was always my understanding, that was part of this phase, is to do the shielding. I'll make, no?
I have no plans on that. With the plans that were provided.
Yeah, no problem.
Was just for that front enclosure.
Okay.
So any additional work, I can say from a zoning standpoint, hasn't been reviewed. Any site work, like we looked at just the restriping of the front parking lot.
Okay, and I sort of came in on the back end, as you know. They asked me to step in.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
Now that I know that, I'll get something to you.
Okay.
To show you what we're doing, and I'll let you hopefully approve it, or at least give me your comments on it.
Okay.
So I'll work on that.
Getting back to something that you said before, why are these two separate permit numbers for the exact same thing?
That's not me. Don't know.
Do you know, Kristen?
I know that the outdoor walk-in cooler, let me look, and that's the one in the parking lot. Let me just take a look at
It
that.
looks like they're the same thing, that's why.
It could be an interior one, so let's see.
Let's,
That permit's not even issued.
Yeah.
Since 2020.
I mean, the dates are different on here from when the permits were issued, but
Let's see.
To Member Goshar's point, 2201725 was never even issued. It's still in, it says in
because I
review
see,
stage.
because it went from being 2007 Paso Grill LLC to Cullen Properties, perhaps?
Yeah, so I think that one's probably
So one of them's void then, right? Yeah.
Kristen, while we have the new contractor here, outside of the updated plans to include the siding for the cooler, is there any other pieces of information that the city's been waiting on that we can now re-request with their new team?
Let's see. Trying to think. I know that there was some, as part of the property across the street, the parking lot, there was to be compact parking spaces labeled that haven't been done when the trash enclosure was put in. And I was told that had to wait until the whole restriping of everything was completed.
I will make sure that's done for you.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll be restriping the parking lot that's there, so when we do that, I'll have the crew out there and I can
Okay.
go across the
But
street.
some of those are to be labeled on that property across the street, to be laid compact, as per the approved plan. Some of the spaces in front of the restaurant now are to be golf cart spaces and labeled appropriately. So, yeah, if you have any questions about that, or which ones or anything, just please let our office know.
Okay, let me pull up my plans, make sure I have that site plan across the street, because I think that dumpster was permitted separately from this, so let me make sure I can get my hands on that. If not, I'll
Okay.
contact you guys and get a copy of it.
I would also to add, I know we have an ongoing issue, I think I might have referenced it last time with our neighboring restaurant to the south, the Wharf. There's been some oil spills or some grease spills, I guess is what it's more appropriate. And they actually were cited, I believe, last month by the city for a code enforcement issue. So that is almost a monthly occurrence. We're getting some grease spills onto the parking lot, so we're trying to work that out as well.
You're getting grease spills on your parking lot?
Correct. It's
From over there? From the wharf?
correct. Yeah, our
I know I've been there many times at both places.
yeah. So the properties above, they're adjacent.
Yes, I know.
I have pictures, but I don't want to disparage anybody. But
That's okay. I mean, I understand this is a separate concern.
yeah. So
Fair.
that issue is something that we're dealing with, and it's not we're not able to necessarily redo the parking lot yet, but we're trying to work that.
What about the landscaping plan, Kristen? Is that something that we've received?
The landscaping plan has been submitted and received.
Do we have a timeline at this point, an updated timeline for all of this to be completed?
Well, we're going to start the roof beginning of April, which should take probably, it's going to be a standing seam roof, so that's probably going to take a good week to put on. It's a little harder than shingles. And then the siding should commence. So if everything goes as planned, let's say by the end of May.
Okay. So we know construction doesn't always go as planned, but
Well, yeah, and the problem we're having too is labor.
Sure, I understand. It's a challenging time for all of us in the rebuild. But I do think, given the attention to this project and the continued transition with your teams and whatnot, that having a final review of everything being done would be warranted.
Sure.
If you're thinking end of May, I'd say maybe to
And
be
that might
safe,
be-
our July meeting.
Well, I would just say end of May, let's reconnect, because there's just a million of these, it looks like, that could be or should be closed out, Kyle, right? And so at a minimum, we can get a checkpoint on
Absolutely.
having them all closed out, or we're identifying where we're at on the status. So I think that would be great.
So you'd be more comfortable having them come back for the May meeting?
Yeah.
When?
I say June.
Okay, that's fine.
What the difference?
Either one.
June meeting?
Dan, I like Dan's idea, June.
June meeting?
That's
Okay.
fine.
Kristen, do you have that date handy?
I do. Yep,
Okay.
June 25th.
I do have a question. Is that going to
Yep.
tie into my certificate of completion then, or?
No.
Okay.
No,
This is
I'll call
solely,
the finals in.
we
and-
hope that you'll already have that. by then.
You and me both. I just want to make sure that wasn't gonna,
no, this is
We are
separate.
not, no.
so, okay.
No.
All right, that's fine.
And honestly, yeah, if everything is buttoned up and addressed, then we may just punt the topic based on agreements on
We've got beer.
both sides.
Yeah.
So,
All right, thank you guys for the update. Good luck as you continue to
All right.
finish the project.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
And Kristen, I put that in the calendar so that
All right.
It is a bit
That-
confusing.
Concludes all agenda items for today. Was there any other items for discussion? City Attorney, Kristen?
No,
Board?
no other items.
How does next month look?
Next month, which our meeting is April 30th, we look to have one practical difficulty variance coming in. There's some still in the works that just need to come to fruition and completeness, so.
All right.
One thing.
Yes?
Are we supposed to declare ex parte on every case before the case?
yes, if you have one.
Is there any ex parte from today's cases that was not declared?
no.
No? Okay. We'll do a better job in the future of making sure that we do that case by case. Thank you. All right, meeting adjourned.